So we're going to start with that tonight, and as part of the pregame show, one of the things I do for folks who don't, as folks are trickling in, kind of talk about the books and things that I've been reading over the course of the week to kind of give some space on that. I read the Bradbury story in Fantastic Science Fiction. This was published in November 1965, so this predates me by about 14 years, almost to the day, because birthday's in November. And the Bradbury short story in this is Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And it is aged in an interesting way, because the premise of this is, and I'll just spoil this for you, it's been from 1965, so I'm going to assume that you've had time to read it. The premise of this is that a new Hitler is on the rise in 1955, and that a message has been sent back in time. Evening time zombie. Congratulations. The pandemic is not a bad time to be on unemployment, even if you might be at the tail end of it. I think you have at least till September, unless they extend it, which I have a feeling that Republicans in Congress will absolutely stomp the brake and pull the emergency brake and run into a wall to prevent from happening. But enjoy it while it lasts! Regular unemployment is also good too. Washington State is fantastic for a social safety net. But anyway, yeah, so this is the premise is there's a kind of like a Hitler brewing in 1955 in America. He's a congressman, and a woman from 500 years in the future is running through that sort of like mental game of like, what if you could kill Hitler? What if you could go back in time and tell someone to kill Hitler? And so like time travel experiments fail. People kind of come, hamsters come back with no heads, missing parts, inside out, those sorts of aberrations. So what she's able to do is she's able to send a typewriter back in time, and the typewriter has a partner in the future. So when she types on it, the main character can see it in the present, and when he types on it, she can see it in the future. And this is a really novel idea in the science fiction, and this is basically texting. It's literally texting, except using a typewriter. And so the entire premise is being able to text across time periods over a period of 500 years. And it feels very charming now. It's one of those moments where you can see a glint of the technology that is to come in the science fiction of the past, and that's a really amazing thing to discover. Well, I mean, the other problem with that is that Hitler was also created in part by it was a combination of personality and historical circumstances, and it is almost certainly guaranteed that if Hitler specifically didn't exist, then somebody would also have been shaped by the historical circumstances of post-World War I austerity to create a similar populist movement. Not great. Don't use austerity. It's bad. Our future cat. Small cat as a pig that fits in the hand. Well, I mean, that that's perfect. It's actually a very easy story to tell, and does not get into any of the sort of the more confusing allusions and references that many people's pet names sort of imply, and I include myself in that. No, I'm not a fan of the great person theory. I remember there are. This is an oversimplification, but in general, there are two kinds of historians. One who look at patterns that give rise to certain types of people in certain times, and then there's the great person. And an historian whose lecture I was listening to on like one of the great lecture series said that there's almost always a match between the person who thinks of the great person theory comes from an upper class background, and people who think of it as a systems theory come from lower to middle class backgrounds. And I think that's a very interesting correlation, because I guess if you move in circles where there are few people and they have a lot of power, then you tend to focus on individuals with power rather than being at the behest of systems that shape your life. That's a really good question. I don't know about the outcome, but it was destined to turn into something. Oh, Theodore. For some reason, I think, didn't you used to have Theodore as your handle name? Anyway, I remember you, of course. Cad pig. That's great. But, so, the other thing that I've been doing, and I actually have show and tell for this one. This is good. So I continued reading 100 Years of Japanese Film, Donald Ritchie. And the tragedy of this is that so many of these movies are lost to history because they were just destroyed. They were either consumed, consumed, destroyed, whatever. And so they don't exist. So now he's getting up to the point in history where he is talking about movies that have survived and movies that I have seen, and I'm able to go into the movies and look at what he's talking about, and it's fantastic. Of course I destroy them on camera. That's what these fists are for. Punching movies. All right, this is great. Great chat's kind of coming up on my iPad now, and that makes for a much easier following when I switch away. So this is something I've discovered. This is I can do a slideshow function with Twitch, and this is great. So this is the end of our pregame show here, as I figured this out. Let's drop this on down here. So this is from. There we go. It works. This is from a Sadao Yamanaka movie called Soshun Kochiyama? I forget the name of it specifically. It is one of these. It's a movie that is not translated, unfortunately. I mean, it's translated, but the title isn't translated, so I have a harder time remembering it. I will find that later and put it in chat. But so what's really interesting about this? This is the thing that that Richie points out, that I was able to go back and kind of like look at the individual stills and frames and see that it works. Is this is like the climax of one of the main protagonists' moments in the movie. And it's pretty awesome. Evening Gamer Jim, it's good to see you. I don't know if you're talking about the slideshow or the Twin Snakes, but if it's either one, you're in luck. But so this is one of the protagonist's sort of like final moments, and he's sort of he's kind of a ruffian, sort of an enlightened figure who nonetheless is kind of like, you know, lives in the city, lives in the town, is not really a noble, which is often, you know, the samurai's sort of status in these movies. But he dies a samurai's death by sort of like ennobling up. He's helping a boy get away and skedaddle from a group of sort of thieves that are pursuing him because he killed one of their own. And so he's putting up this barricade, right? And so what's interesting is how long they linger on the barricade and his holding it up, and how many different shots they go through. So here he is. This is like right at the beginning of his sort of like final moments where he's setting up the barricade. And I believe the hotkey, I've got this for this. Yeah, there we go. And so then it cuts over to this shot here, where it's showing him pulling it back. And it's really interesting looking at just the visual composition of this shot, where you have the water coming down out of a pipe from upper left down to the right, down to the middle, and you have that sort of slashing diagonally across in kind of an X shape against some of the barricade. And he's there vertically. And so what you have, this visual composition of a lot of dynamism and even chaos, and then he is there with this like sort of perfect vertical, and then there's empty space on the right, and it really does look like stemming back a tide. And then it, you know, there's chaos and junk on the left, and then there's sort of him as a barrier between that and free open space. Then it cuts to this, which is just him sort of 1,000-yard stare, understanding this is his last moment, and his resolve has a kind of peace to it. He's not grimacing, he's not sour, which is actually really interesting as a distinction to the way a lot of the facial acting goes in a lot of these samurai characters in the Jirageki, because they're full of resolve and firm, and that's not his attitude here at the end, and that's great. And then it cuts again further back. Same sort of idea, but then further back away, so you're further distanced, and you still see the water coming slashing down. And this whole thing takes like 30 to 45 seconds, and that's not the kind of lingering that most movies would do on this moment. That's really fascinating. And so besides the composition of the chaos on one side and him stepping it back, here you've got sort of the chaos, everything kind of encroaching. And you also have this image of the water flooding down, and you have him holding up a barricade, and there's sort of a dam imagery there, right? Because you have the water flowing down, it's unimpeded. And then when you see what's on the other side of the barricade, it's, you know, these thieves they're trying to push and overcome. And so that's kind of the rushing against the dam. And eventually, you know, one of them gets through and cuts. You know, they don't show a lot of blood in those older ones, but you know, he takes one, and that's his last hit, and then he still holds on and is still kind of like a force against the chaos. And then it cuts to the boy escaping, which is what he is trying to, which is what he's trying to create the option for. And so just compositionally, it's so interesting because now no longer are you looking. Let me go back. No longer are you looking at the chaos. No longer are you looking at the one person who is stopping his pursuers. You're seeing him in free open space in very vertical lines with a definite horizon line. You can see the horizon, right? Which is itself kind of sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Hint of hope. And so the boy is running to freedom into the future. And so you have all of that chaos and him stemming it back, and the imagery of the water and lingering shots and just sort of like checking it out from several different angles to let you see like what it conveys the emotion of the moment more than it does the action. And to be able to take that kind of time and linger and use composition of shots and it's amazing to me. I love this. And then comparing that to this, it's beautiful. And then so kind of like another thing that's really cool. One of the things that makes this sort of like open area, this open air thing really interesting, is this is the scene prior to that. So those thieves that you saw kind of like pushing up against the dam. This is them before as they're beginning their sort of attack, and many of these scenes are in a town, in a city, so these closed alleyways and very cramped spaces. And it's really interesting look at where the alleys go. They kind of go in the distance there, kind of terminate on the left. You've got a lot of crowding people kind of pushing out of it. And then once they break through the house and get onto the other side, there is this ditch that is running behind the house, and there are these small little bridges that are crossing the ditch, and that's where the action happens. So it's like everything is in this very cramped space. It's very focused. And these little bridges are very interesting, just as things over ditches to me. But yeah, and then it kind of pulls back away. There's another bridge, and the action just takes place on these bridges at different levels, and you kind of hop back between them. And it's just really, really cool seeing how just this consistent shape, this consistent distance is used to terminate space at an end, while also showing cramped close quarters action. And again, that is everything leading up to the dam sequence, and which then ends with this. So it's just that sort of form, using shape to tell the story more than verbs, more than words, more than actions, more than narration. And that is, I love it. I love it, love it, love it. Form creating content. It's where my heart lives. Which is one of the reasons why I wrote Driving Off the Map. This film is, let me get that for you. Oh, actually, I can just get it in the book. It does not have an English title, but it is available if you look for a DVD or Blu-ray called the Surviving Films of Sadao Yamanaka. You can find it. It is not Humanity and Paper Balloons. That's not it. Soshun Kochiyama. That's spelled, I will type this into chat. That's, come on, dude. Well, this keyboard kind of sucks. So I'm going to spell it for you. S-O-S-H-U-N, second word, Kochiyama. And yes, Time Zombie, life is a ditch. Hopefully one that we can get out of. The book title is 100 Years of Japanese Film. It's by Donald Ritchie, spelled R-I-T-C-H-I-E. And it's very well written. And thank you, Gamer Jim. Yeah, this is kind of what I do.